Hello everyone. Very good evening to all of you. I hope you all are doing good. And yeah, so MCQs we are done with. Okay, we have discussed the MCQs and you will get the PDF of the MCQs, whatever remaining MCQs are there for your practice. So from today we will start the conceptual marathon of economics for SEBI, right? So we will discuss the main concepts, important concepts, chapter wise only. So today we will be starting with demand and supply. So we'll go in the series as we have done with the paid courses, right? So I'll start the conceptual, so that you have the conceptual clarity. I'll start with the conceptual discussion from today. Just let me know, is the audio video all clear? Audio video all good? All right. So first of all, as we have discussed, what is economics and what is the difference between economics and economy, right? So can you please quickly tell me what is the difference? So economics as a subject, or as I have told you in the classes as well, if I ask you to define the entire subject of economics into one word, that why the subject has, got birth as a proper scientific subject. So what is that reason? If you can please tell me. Anyone? What is the reason behind the birth of economics as a science or as a subject? So it is scarcity, right? It is scarcity. If you remember, I have told you in the classes as well, scarcity or dearth of something. Scarcity or dearth of something. So in economics as a science, we try to understand how efficiently can we utilize our limited resources, be it physical resource, human made resource, any kind of resource, to maximize our satisfaction, basically, which is utility, right? To maximize our satisfaction which we get from our desires. So this is the thing, right? So economics, the one word if I ask you, or if I tell you, as a reason behind the birth of economics is a scarcity, remember this, right? And yes, when you apply the theories, when you apply the system to run your economy, so economy is the system where these theories are applied into, right? Economy is the system where all these things, they operate in reality. So when we talk about the different types of market, in economy, you operate the market, right? So this is the difference. Economics is the subject which deals with how to maximize your satisfaction using the limited resources. Scarcity deals with the scarcity more than wealth. It deals with the scarcity. Remember this thing, right? So I have seen people, they attach economics to understanding of wealth. No, it is not only wealth. Economics is different from finance. So finance primarily talks about wealth, but economics talks about how efficiently you utilize these limited resources, right? And the economy is the application of the economical concepts. So this is the concept of difference between economics and economy. Next thing which we have, so we have seen the definitions given by different economists, right? If you see, Adam Smith is the father of economics. You all know that, right? Adam Smith, father of economics, and he has been the author of the famous treatise, which is Wealth of Nations, right? Wealth of Nations. Remember this thing. Now, as I told you, there is a difference between desire or demand and a want, or demand and desire. Remember this thing. So when we talk about demand and supply as a chapter, and you know that SEBI asks questions frequently from demand and supply as well. So what is the difference between demand and a desire? So basically, if I want to buy a car, for example, a luxury car, I want to buy a luxury car. This is my desire. Okay. But when I have a capacity, I have enough money to afford that car, I can afford that car, that becomes a demand, right? So demand is desire plus your ability and capacity to pay for that thing, right? Desire plus your ability and capacity to pay for the thing which you want to purchase, right? So this is demand. So demand basically or quantity demanded, as we say. Yes, quantity demanded, as we say, is something that at a given price you are willing to buy or not, because that price, if you are willing to buy something at a given price, that shows you are able to afford it, right? This is the thing. So remember this difference between want, desire, these all are abstract things. But when you have the capacity to buy that thing, it turns into a demand, as we call in economics, right? I hope this is clear. So subject matter of economics as a subject, if we divide broadly, is related to production, technique, exchange, distribution, price, consumption. So we have studied all these things, right? We will start with demand and supply today. Before moving to demand and supply, there are certain stages. So when we talk about production as a concept, before moving to demand and supply concept, if I discuss with you the concept of production, can you tell me what is production? Production is basically the process of value addition, as I call it, right? So it is a process of value addition. Remember this thing. Just remember this line. What is production? Production is a process of value addition. Production is a process of value addition, right? Why do we say that? See, if you want to produce a cake, right, for example, out of wheat flour, now in the entire stage, first you use the say seeds, right? First you use the grains, then you convert into flour, then you use that flour to bake. So it is basically adding the value in each stage. So production is nothing but a process of value addition. If you try to make a cloth out of cotton, so in raw cotton, you have added value, right? That's why you see the final product after the production line has been completed, or this process of production has been completed, becomes expensive than the raw material, because you have added value into it. So production is nothing but a process of value addition. Remember this thing. So of course, in production, how you are producing something is the technique of production, right? Whether you are utilizing technology more in the production processes or units, or labor more in the production processes or units. So technique of production varies. Exchange, right? So when you produce, you also exchange, because we are producing and someone has been able to produce something at a lower cost, right? And someone is not able to produce that thing. That's why we exchange. That's why we have trade. So there are these two concepts of comparative advantage and absolute advantage that give birth to the idea of trade, that we should trade. Why? Because say there's a country A has huge oil reserves, but then it lacks into some other kind of resources which country B has. So they both exchange it, right? So this is the idea behind exchange. Then distribution. Of course, so we need to share the income we have generated in the process of production, right? It should not be concentrated in a few hands. That is the idea of sharing, distributing the income. So when we talk about inequality or concentration of wealth, if your GDP is improving, if your GDP is growing, that means your economy is having good economic activities and income generating activities. The proceeds of those activities has to be well distributed. This is the idea. Then value. Value is the capacity of want satisfying power of a commodity, or say, in other words, it is the utility. Utility, the concept of utility is going to come in the PDF, and we have discussed what is utility, right? What is marginal utility? What is total utility? What is law of diminishing marginal utility? So basically, we will do all these things later. Basically, utility is what? So in economics, we call it utility. Want satisfying capacity of a good. So for example, when you are hungry, you want to eat food, right? And when you take the first bite, it gives you the maximum satisfaction, right? But then when you are filled up, right, when you are done with the food, you are no longer hungry. That food only causes you discomfort if you eat it beyond a certain limit, right? So this is what law of diminishing marginal utility says as well. So this is utility. How much a good has the capacity to satisfy your desire is utility in economics. And then we have two approaches for this, cardinal approach and ordinal approach. We will look into this later on in the PDF, right? And then we have the concepts of price, consumption. What is consumption? So consumption is the end use of a product, product, right? So in production, you are adding value to a good or a raw material. In consumption, you are just using that product for your own satisfaction, right? Price of a commodity. Price of the commodity is the amount at which the seller is ready to sell and the buyer is ready to buy, right? Is the price. Now, when we talk about the branches of economics, we have discussed that broadly there are two branches, right? So, when we talk about branches, let me quickly give you a review. We have two branches, microeconomics. So, when we talk about branches, I think it should be white, right? Branches, it is microeconomics and macroeconomics, right? As we have discussed, in microeconomics, we try to study the behavior of an individual. You can remember it like this, just for remembering. I for individual, it is not an acronym, just giving you a hint to remember it like this way, right? So I stands for individual and A stands for, you can relate it like A stands for aggregate. Aggregate means total level, right? So when we study all these theories, models, assumptions at an individual level, it is microeconomics, right? For example, consumer behavior, producer behavior, demand, supply, individual demand, individual producer behavior, consumer behavior. So we try to place ourselves, or we try to understand the psychology of a consumer, psychology of a producer, right? How does market work? How do they behave in the market? This is microeconomics. But then when we apply all these concepts to the aggregate level, which is at total, at the level of a nation as a whole, so then we get macroeconomics. In macroeconomics, we deal with the concepts like inflation, unemployment, right? Poverty, GDP, national income, right? So these are the concepts we study in the macroeconomics, right? At the macro level. These are important for policy making and they actually affect the entire life, the life of the entire nation, right? So this is the thing. This is something you already know. What is microeconomics and what is macroeconomics? So these are the branches of economics. I have told you what do we study in micro and macro. So in microeconomics, we study about the demand, we study about the supply, theory of demand, theory of supply, then factors of production. We will do all these things. Consumption behavior, consumption function, and all these things. In macroeconomics, we deal with the economic problems or economic issues at a national level, at a greater level, or at a broader level, at aggregate level, right? So as I told you, we study about the business cycles as we have discussed the entire chapter on it, inflation, theories of growth or national income accounting, investment function, multiplier, banking and all these things, right? Now, another very important concept, and they ask questions on this. So we are very clear. I hope you all are very clear with these basic and small concepts, right? Economics, branches, scope of these, their subject matter and all. Now we have to discuss the types of goods. These goods, they ask questions on these categories, right? What are the types of goods? So first category is in front of you, which is final good. So final good, as the name suggests, how do you classify whether a good is a final good or an intermediate good? Remember what I told you. Just remember the definition which I gave you for production. What is production? Tell me quickly. What is production? Yes, I'm waiting for the answers. What is production? Quickly. What is production? So we have discussed that production is a process of value addition. isn't it? So how do you classify whether a good is a final good or not? If yes, production is a process of value addition. For a good, if there is no further value addition is required, it is a final good. That means that product is ready for end use by the consumer, right? And if there is further value addition which is required, then it is an intermediate good. Now, there is a point to be noted here. If you are provided with a condition, with an example that this is the feature of the good, identify it. So you should decide it whether it is ready for the end use or it is still in the process of value addition. Is it clear, all of you, right? Another thing which I want you to remember is one good at the same time can be a final good as well as an intermediate good. Why am I saying that? The reason is, if I ask you, say iron, right, or say steel, iron and steel, for example, right? If I ask you iron and steel can be a final good, or iron and steel can be a raw material for an industry as well, right? So iron and steel can be a raw material for an industry which wants to make further machines out of it, isn't it, right? So, or it can be an end use for someone else, for someone else as well. So this is how one product at the same time can be a final good, or as an intermediate good it can work as well, right? So this is the thing. Final goods, these are ready, so they have crossed the boundary line of production. You can remember it like this as well. Or the expenditure which you incur on the final goods is final expenditure, right? Or consumption expenditure, or final consumption expenditure. Clear? So you go to the market, you purchase, say, some chocolate and you eat it, is a final expenditure, final consumption expenditure. Yes. Now you can have in final goods, you can have two categories: consumer goods and producer goods. Consumer goods, if you think that good is ready for your own use, you are consuming it only for satisfying your need or desire or utility, whatever is, it is just a consumer good, final consumer good. But final good can also be a capital good or a producer good. Just take an example very quickly. So you have bought an air conditioner, for example, for your home, right? It is a final consumption expenditure. Why? Because it is final good, no value addition required. Consumption, because you are utilizing it, consuming it, right? It is not being used for any economic activity. But at the same time, say you have purchased an air conditioner for your industry or for your economic unit. That means it is producer good, or it is a capital good, because it is adding to your economic activity. So whatever good adds to your wealth generation process, helps you generate an economic activity, is a capital good, right? So this is the classification. I hope this example is clear to all of you. Intermediate goods, as I told you, those which are still in the boundary line of production, or they have not crossed the boundary line of production, or they are still in the process of value addition, right? These are intermediate goods. So there are raw materials, right? Like, so for example, milk. Milk can be an intermediate good. Now this is the best example we can have. Milk, if you purchase directly from the shop and you consume it, is a final good. But milk, say purchased by a sweet shop to make sweets out of it, is a raw material, is not a final good, is an intermediate good, because they will prepare sweets out of that milk, right? So this is the example. This is how intermediate and final goods are classified. Then you can further classify these. They have asked questions, right? So remember this classification. Consumer goods are further classified into durable, semi-durable, and then non-durable. Okay. Durable, semi-durable, and non-durable, right? So durable goods, as you all know, which have a longer shelf life, okay? Which have a longer shelf life. They can be used several times, right? So you have automobiles, you have cars, you have, say, washing machines and all, ACs, right? Like AC, car, all these goods. So you use them multiple times. They do not get exhausted with a single consumption, with a single use, right? So these are durable goods. Then you have semi-durable goods, which do not have a very long lifespan, but they also do not get exhausted with a single slot of consumption, right? So these are goods which do not have very long lifespan, but they do not get exhausted in a single use as well. For example, crockery, clothing. So it depends on you. If you do not repeat any clothes the next time, it is not a semi-durable, it will be a non-durable good. But still, what is the general norm? We repeat the clothes, right? But then we also change them with time and with fashion, right? Next thing, the another example you have is crockery. So it depends on you how carefully you use these items. Crockery you all have, you might have expensive crockery at your home as well. So in that case, if you are very careful about it, it can be a durable good as well or semi-durable. But if you are very careless, crockery can be, you know, damaged in a single use as well. So it depends on the use as well. Clear, everyone? Next thing, non-durable goods. Non-durable goods, you cannot use them multiple times. Simple. Vegetables, fruits, you bring the vegetable, you eat it, otherwise you will not be able to use that thing. Okay, it will get spoiled. So fruits, okay, vegetables, milk, dairy products, these are non-durable. Some of the dairy products, not all. So very short lifespan they have, and they get exhausted in a single use. So this is the basis of classification: durable, semi-durable and non-durable, right? And then we have another classification. Remember this thing, whenever in economics you read goods, or whenever I say in the classes goods, that also means services, because we not only consume goods, we also consume services, right? So services are intangible items, you cannot touch them. For example, I am rendering this service, I am teaching you, so this is a service, right? There's a doctor rendering you the hospital services, right? So these are the services, they are intangible items, but again they are consumed. So services are also consumed, services are also exported, services are also produced. So when we say goods, that automatically means services as well. So services and goods, they go together, right? I hope this much is clear. Then, so we have consumer goods. Now we have capital goods. What are capital goods? Capital goods, they are repeatedly used in the process of production. As I told you, what are capital goods? Capital goods are goods which they work as an asset, like, so they are fixed assets. For example, machinery you have installed in the factory. Fixed assets like land, right? Say you have installed ACs. So any asset which helps you in the process of wealth generation, or you are utilizing it in the process of any income generating activity or economic activity, is a capital good. Is that clear? Right? Now, example, any building, plant, machinery, right? So they help you convert the intermediate goods into final goods. This is also the definition you can remember. So there is a machine and you use that machine to convert a raw material into a final good. So this is a capital good. That's how it helps you in generating wealth, isn't it? So either ways you can remember, right? So these were the classification of goods. I hope this is clear to all of you. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Otherwise, we shall move ahead with other concepts, right? Now, concept of utility, wealth and production. So before moving into the discussion of demand and supply, there are certain basic concepts. Who is a consumer? What is consumption? What is utility, right? So who is a consumer? Consumer is one who takes decisions about what to buy for own satisfaction, his or her own satisfaction as a consumer, right? So we all are consumers, be it government, be it a producer. A producer is also a consumer. So whosoever is born on this earth is a consumer, isn't it? Whosoever has taken birth as a human is a consumer, because you pay for it. You consume at least something to survive, right? Is a consumer. Now, consumption. So consumption, if we want to define, is the satisfaction of human wants, right? Through the use of goods and services. As I told you, we not only consume goods, we also consume services. We not only produce goods, we also produce services. So when we talk about consumption or production, it is for both the things, goods as well as services, right? Goods as well as services. Is this clear? Now, so if you see, what are the determinants of consumption or household demand? We can also say that consumption is nothing but household demand. What a household demands in total is also consumption, right? So if a household has, say, 3 members, whatever demand is generating from that home is consumption. Now, what are the determinants? So of course, whenever you have a confusion regarding, say, theory of demand, just remember this thing. If you have any confusion regarding a question being asked regarding theory of demand, you consider yourself as a rational consumer. You place yourself in that place and then think of the answer, you'll get the right answer. And if you are confused in a question relating to theory of supply or production, you consider yourself as a producer and try to get into the psychology of a producer, place yourself at that place, you will get the right answer, right? So what is the determinant? You go to the market to purchase something, the first thing which you ask for is the price, isn't it? So price is the important determinant. Price, of course, price is the determinant. Next, income available. So how much price are you willing to pay depends on your budget, right? If your income increases, you might be able to or willing to pay more, isn't it? So this is the thing. These two are the important determinants: price, income available, and then accumulated wealth can also be used for, say, buying some asset. That can also be a determinant. Price of other products. We are going to discuss these things in detail later on in the PDF, but still giving you just a reference of this point. What do we mean by price of other products? So price of other products means price of related products. And when we say related products, we have two kind of relations for products here. One is substitute goods, and the other is complementary goods. Substitute goods and complementary goods. If I ask you the example of substitute goods, tell me quickly, what is an example of substitute good and what is an example of complementary good? We have done these things in the classes earlier in a much detail. Tea and coffee. Very good. So substitute good ka best example is tea and coffee. What about the complementary goods? So first complete the substitute goods. Substitute goods, one can be substituted for the other. Okay. This is not a personal choice, just an example to try and understand. So you might not like coffee in place of tea. That is your personal choice. But these can be easily substituted, right? Coke and Pepsi. Yes. Car and petrol. Car and petrol are complementary goods. So these are substitute goods. Now what kind of a relation it has? Suppose you are indifferent to the consumption of tea and coffee because these are substitute for you. Now the prices of tea, it rises, so tea becomes expensive. That's how rise in price of one good leads to rise in demand of the other. So if tea becomes expensive, you may easily shift to the consumption of coffee, right? So this is how substitute goods, they determine the relationship. Then we have, yes, complementary goods which complete each other. For example, ink, so the refill and the pen. A pen only cover cannot work, it cannot write, right? So you need a refill for that, you need ink for that. So it is a complementary, they are complementary. Then a car cannot run without fuel, right? Any fuel, be it in form of CNG or diesel or petrol, any fuel. So let's call it fuel, right? So car and petrol, car and wheels, car cannot go without wheels. Yes. So what kind of relation here is in price and demand of complementary goods? Inverse relationship. So if, say, price of fuel rises, any of the fuel which is being used in the car cannot run without the fuel, right? So raw material has risen, input has risen. So now car also becomes expensive, isn't it? If you want to own a car, run a car, you need to bear the expense of the fuel as well. So that might lead to fall in the demand of the car. So this is how price and demand for complementary goods are related to each other, negatively or inversely. And for substitute goods, they have a direct or positive relation or proportional relation. Is this clear? Right? Okay, so that's why we say prices of other products or related products, they also are important determinants of consumption. Next thing, taste and preference. Taste and preference or future speculations. Taste and preference, of course. So whatever taste or preference is going on in the market, for example, whenever the Apple launches a new model of the iPhone, people go for it, right? So the earlier one becomes obsolete. This is how whatever in clothing, whatever the fashion wave is going on, in jewelry, whatever the fashion wave is going on. So, or what is your taste? It depends according to the season as well. In winters, you might go more for the tea and coffee kind of products. In summers, you go more for the ice creams and juices and shakes and all, right? So these are the other determinants which also affect the demand. Okay, now another important concept where they ask you direct questions from is consumption function or Keynesian consumption function. I hope you all are very clear with the idea of consumption. What is consumption and what all are the determinants, right? Now, what is consumption function? So, consumption function basically tells you that consumption is a function of disposable income, right? So this equation tells you on what all things does the overall consumption depends. So remember, the consumption function or the Keynesian function, it is capital C is equals to A plus B Y or YD. C is equals to A plus BY. C is equals to A plus BY. Now what is C? C here is consumption, YD or Y, capital Y. So wherever you see capital Y in economics, it means income or national income, right? Or income particularly. We are not talking about the GDP and national income, so we'll not call it national income. Here we are studying about the consumption function, so it is disposable income. YD or capital Y here is disposable income. What is disposable income? The income which you can dispose at your will. That means out of your, say, personal income, gross total income or personal income, you have deducted the taxation liabilities, right? Whatever taxes you were to pay, you have deducted all those liabilities out of your personal income. That results into personal disposable income. So basically the consumption expenditure which you incur is from the disposable income only. So say for example, if you are earning 1 lakh rupees per month, right? You are earning 1 lakh rupees per month, but you cannot dispose that entire 1 lakh. You have to pay the income tax as well. Now just consider for an example that 20,000 out of it goes, or say 10,000 goes, just take 10,000. Now you have 90,000 as the disposable income. So this is at your will. This is something which you can dispose at your will, is disposable income, right? Then A here is, this is small a is autonomous consumption. Autonomous consumption means consumption even when income is zero. Why do we use this, or why Keynes has placed this A into the equation? Because tell me one thing, can consumption be zero at any point of time in your life? Yes or no? Tell me one thing, can consumption ever be zero? So we say that your consumption depends on the income as well. But I'm asking you, say you are unemployed. Do you stop consuming? Yes. So For example, if you are unemployed, you are not earning anything, you stop consuming? No, right? So consumption is something which remains, it even if your income is zero. So that level, when your income is zero, is autonomous. Why autonomous? So it is not dependent on the income level. So small a here is autonomous consumption. Small a here is autonomous consumption, right? When income is zero, still you consume something, that is autonomous consumption, right? At least basic food to survive, for example. Then what is B? B is marginal propensity to consume. Another very important concept, direct questions can be asked, right? So there is this concept of MPC, or marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume. What is MPC? MPC, marginal propensity to consume. So first thing, if you see, first try to understand the concept of MPC. Wherever you see this word marginal in economics, be very clear about this. Marginal is an additional. Marginal is an additional. Okay. Marginal means what? Marginal means an additional. So marginal consumption, additional consumption. Marginal production, additional production. So marginal propensity to consume, MPC tells you, say, how much additional income you want to spend on consumption. If your income has increased by, say, 1000 rupees, yes, 1000 rupees, not the total income. Out of that increase, which is 1000 rupees, whatever the level of income you are earning, if it has increased by 1000 rupees, out of that increase, how much you are allocating for your consumption is also something which determines your total level of consumption, or capital C. Yes. So with increase in income, or how much portion of your increased income you spend on the consumption. So marginal propensity to consume, if it is higher, it shows that with addition into your income, you are spending it more on consumption, right? Because either you consume, if you remember this equation, y is equals to c plus s, right? Either you consume or you save. So if your income is, say, 1 lakh, and say it is 90k plus 10k, right? So if your income is, say, 1 lakh, 90,000 goes to consumption, and what is not consumed is saved. So by definition, what is saving? That part of the income which is not consumed is saved. That part of the income which is not consumed is saved. So either you consume or you save. So you have two concepts here. If it increases by 50,000, say becomes 1.5. So that increase of 50,000, out of that increase, how much you have spent on consumption will be MPC, marginal propensity to consume, and how much you spend or how much you save out of that increase will be your MPS, marginal propensity to save. Similar concept, it's just that it is not consumption but it is saving. I hope this is clear to all of you, right? So this is a marginal propensity to consume. As I told you, the percentage of extra income, remember extra income, not total income, the additional income, because marginal means additional, right? So extra income that is spent is something which is shown by MPC, or it is also known as induced consumption. So remember these two terminologies here. Recently we have seen autonomous consumption and induced consumption. Induced means whatever is dependent on something. For investment we also have this terminology, autonomous investment and induced investment. Induced investment or consumption which is dependent on the level of income. So when we are talking about induced consumption, that means it depends on the income. So because by definition, whatever increase in your income you are spending, so it is dependent on your income. Autonomous, even if your income is zero, what you are spending is autonomous consumption, right? So remember the difference between autonomous consumption and induced consumption. I hope this is clear. Now, marginal propensity to consume is the proportion of an increase in the income that gets spent on consumption, right? Now, it varies by income level, right? So MPC is typically lower at higher income and vice versa. MPC is typically lower at higher income and vice versa. Remember this feature. Why do we say that? Why do we say that? That MPC is typically lower at higher income? Because this is again a theory which says that when your income increases, your expenditure on consumption, actually the proportion gets reduced, isn't it? Because now you have a broad amount of income, so proportion of that income which you spend, consumption is a necessity, right? You might spend on luxury goods, that is something different, but if we talk about the basic consumption, if your income increases and increases and increases to greater levels, that proportion which you spend on consumption gets reduced. So we are talking about the proportion. Clear? But say if your income is less, but there are certain things which you have to consume. You have to consume services as well. You have to take educational services. You have to take medicinal benefits. You have to take healthcare services. You have to consume food, nutritious food, healthy food, right? So for certain level of income, you have to incur some kind of expenditure, even if your income is less. But then when your income increases, that proportion gets reduced. I hope this is clear, right? Now, how do you calculate MPC? MPC is delta C by delta Y. Remember this thing, okay? MPC is delta C by delta Y. Change in consumption due to any given change in the income level. This is how we define MPC as well. So remember, if there is any change in the, so it will be in the base. If there is any change in the income, in response to this change, how much proportion of this change you are using as consumption expenditure is only MPC. So MPC is equals to delta C by delta Y. Right? Okay. Is this clear? MPC, delta C by delta Y. All right. Now, consumer behavior. Why do we want to study consumer behavior? Because then we get to know how much or how does a consumer behaves in a market. So that's how it helps you decide the price of the commodity. Who decides the price of a commodity? And when I say commodity, I mean goods as well as services, right? So it gets decided on the basis of demand and supply in the market. Wherever the demand for a good or a service and supply, they meet at a point, they become equal to each other, is the price of the commodity, right? So, but then to determine how much demand is there or how much supply is there, you need to understand how consumer is going to behave or how a particular producer is going to behave in a particular condition or situation, right? Next, so again, a very important concept, a concept of consumer surplus. What is consumer surplus? What is consumer surplus? So this was first developed by this person, Jules Dupuy. Okay, remember the name, Jules Dupuy. Now, this is the person who first developed this, but then it was popularized later by famous economist Alfred Marshall, right? Famous economist Alfred Marshall. Now, consumer surplus says that additional benefit which we receive when we pay actually less for a product than what we are willing to pay. So say if you are willing to pay say 500 for a product, but then you end up paying only 200 for example. So these kind of local markets and then the markets where you can bargain a lot gives a result or results into a consumer surplus. Can you tell me such an example famous for in Delhi itself, which is famous for a lot of bargaining? So in that case, why are the consumers so satisfied? The quality of the product is compromised. They are sometimes used even, right? But still you go for it. Why? Because of consumer surplus. So this is how consumers behave. Can you tell me the example of the market? Anyone? You know that the quality is compromised, but still people have a lot of demand for this market. Very good, Sarojini, right? One such example. There are other local hearts and markets as well. So there what happens is, say you have bargained for a product, right? Now you know that I can pay 500 for this, but you still bargain and then you end up paying 200 only, right? So the seller agrees to sell you that cloth at say 200 rupees, right? So you end up paying less than what you were willing to. This results into a satisfaction surplus, or this results into a surplus of the amount which remains with you is consumer surplus, because you are the consumer, right? So consumer surplus is willing price minus actual price. What you are willing to pay minus what you have actually paid for a good or a service. Okay, so that can also be an example in Nagaland. Willing price minus actual price. Clear? Consumer surplus. Willing price is the price which you are willing to pay to buy that good, and actual price is something at which it is sold in the market. So say you are willing to pay 500 but you get it for 200, so 300 is the consumer surplus. Level of paper is for SEBI phase 2, if you see, not so high. They ask you these basic concepts and numericals only. If you have studied these things very well, it will not be very high for you, right? It will not be difficult in that case. It is of good level, of course, but then your preparation decides the level. Actually, your preparation decides the level, right? So this is consumer surplus, willing price minus actual price. I hope this is clear. You will get this PDF. I don't know where will it be uploaded. I'll let you know in the next class, okay? I'll ask the team, then I'll let you know about the PDF and all. So, any doubt so far? No? Okay. Now, very, very important concept, utility. Direct questions have been asked. Utility, elasticity, one of the favorite topics, right? So, what is utility? We have discussed so far. Utility is the satisfaction which you get when you consume something. That consumption can be of a good as well as of a service as well. For macro just have conceptual clarity, okay? If your basics and fundamentals of macro are strong, it will be your favorite subject. Fundamentals are important because in economics you cannot mug up. If you mug up a definition, they'll ask you something very tinted and very reframed question, you'll not be able to answer. So concepts is the key. Having your fundamentals strong is the key, right? So say national income in macroeconomics, be very clear on what is GDP, what is NDP, what is NNP. You will be able to deal with the questions. Yes, satisfaction which you get from consumption of a good or a service is utility. So it is basically want satisfying power of a good, and when I say good, that also means a service, right? Want satisfying power of a good or a service. Now, utility analysis is a method of measuring the satisfaction. So far, there have been two views regarding this. Can you measure the satisfaction? One view says that yes, you can measure it like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 in numbers. And another view says that no, you cannot measure satisfaction. So if I ask you, for example, if you are hungry and you start eating food and you have say consumed one roti or one chapati, right? One chapati, for example. If I ask you how much can you measure how much satisfaction do you get if you eat one and when you eat the third one in numbers? Actually, you cannot, right? Yes or no? Yes or no? In numbers. It is not practically possible to say that, okay, I have got 10 utils. So utils is the unit in which according to cardinal measurement in which you measure the utility. So you do not say usually or in real life that I have got 10 utils from the first chapati and then only 2 utils from the third one. This is not how do you say to your mother, right, at home. Otherwise you will receive something on your face, isn't it? How do you say, okay, पहली खाई तो थोड़ा satisfaction मिला, but then last में आते आते I don't want to eat it, right? So you can give a preference to it. So when we talk about the measurement of utility, it talks about cardinal measurement and ordinal measurement. Cardinal theory or supporters of cardinal measurement, they advocate that utility can be measured in terms of numbers, and they have called this unit as utils, right? But this is not practically possible. Then you have another set of economists or supporters of ordinal measurement who say that no, you cannot measure utility in numbers, you can only give them a rank according to the preference. This is something which gives me more satisfaction, this is something which gives me lesser satisfaction, right? This is practically possible, but then measuring them in terms of absolute numbers is not a practical approach at all, right? So ordinal measurement says that you can rank the preferences. So if you remember in the classes, in ordinal measurement we have done the indifference curve analysis. Indifference curve gives you all the IC curves. So there are these features of IC curve. It gives you set of two goods in which you are indifferent to, right? If an IC curve is higher than the other one, that means all the points located on that IC curve, they offer you higher level of satisfaction. We will do the IC curves as well, then we will revise this concept in that thing. Yes, right? So this is the thing. I hope both of these approaches of measuring utility, the cardinal measurement and the ordinal measurements, are clear, right? All of you. Cardinal as well as ordinal is clear. Okay. Then we will continue our discussion with the law of diminishing marginal utility. So first approach will be, which we will be discussing further, is your cardinal approach. Cardinal approach says that this can be measured in numbers, and there is a famous law which states that with successive consumption or with consumption of successive units, the satisfaction which you get tends to reduce, right? This is what law of DMU or law of diminishing marginal utility says. So it states that as more and more standard units of a commodity are continuously consumed, Marginal utility. Now what is marginal utility? So marginal means an additional, right? Additional utility. Now when I say additional, that means if you are consuming 2 units, now additional 1. So if you consume 3 from the previous unit, you have consumed one additional unit. With consumption of that particular additional unit of something, how much satisfaction do you get is marginal utility, right? Say you have consumed one packet of biscuit, then another. So with successive, yes, additional unit, with successive consumption or consumption of successive units, your satisfaction tends to decline, right? This is what law of diminishing marginal utility says. This is also known as fundamental law of satisfaction or fundamental psychological law. And this was first propounded by H.H. Gosson in 1854. Therefore, it is also known as Gosson's first law of consumption. Remember this thing. They can ask you these names as well. So, also known as fundamental law of satisfaction or fundamental psychological law, and since it was first propounded by H.H. Gosson in 1854, it is also known as Gosson's first law of consumption. Gosson's first law of consumption, right? So this is the concept of law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, before going into any theory, you need to know that it does not work without assumption. Economy cannot work without assumption, or the theories of economics, they do not work without assumption, like mathematics. So in mathematics, you assume that, okay, this is something, yes. So say you assume that x key value is this and y key value is that, or say you assume roots of an equation to be alpha and beta or x and y or whatever, right? So you have to assume to come to the answer. This is how goes with the economics as well. There are certain assumptions on the basis of which a model or a theory has been framed. Otherwise, it would not work, right? So there are certain assumptions of marginal utility or law of diminishing marginal utility as well, which we will discuss in detail, each assumption and its implication in the next class, right? So we done till law of diminishing marginal utility in this PDF, and I'll continue. I'll resume from the assumptions part, assumptions of diminishing marginal utility in the next session. I hope you have enjoyed the class and it is useful for you. Just keep on revising these concepts. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'll end this session here and I'll see you in the next session or next class. Any doubts? Any doubts? No doubts? When is next session? It can probably on Tuesday, right? Because tomorrow is off, as you know, in the institute. We have off on Mondays. So classes do not happen on Mondays. Most probably it will be on Tuesday. Yes, I'm trying to go fast, and will also try to go as fast as possible, right? And cover the important concepts. All right then, thank you so much. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much. If you have any doubts, you can come up with your doubts in the next session now. I'll see you in the next class. Thank you.